Overnight, the IDF kicked off their ground invasion of southern Lebanon as they continue their ongoing war with Hezbollah. And today we're going to run through quite a bit of footage that was just released by the IDF showing their forces operating in southern Lebanon inside some of these Hezbollah tunnels. Now, in the coming days, we're going to go through more of an assessment and analysis of what this means, what to expect going forward. But the volume of footage that was just released that we've never seen before, I felt like was worth its own video to just kind of present and run through. Now, right out the gate, we're going to see some significant Hezbollah tunnels throughout this clip. If you thought what we saw in Gaza was a lot, and it was, there were a ton of tunnels and they were pretty deep, wait till you see some of these things that Hezbollah has built kind of into the mountains in southern Lebanon. And the weaponry as well. This is just the initial piece showing a lot of these different mines, rifles, and we've got a lot of anti-tank guided missiles that'll pop up here shortly as well. You can see IDF operating not just above ground, but not just underground, but above ground as well. And we've got a couple animations that the IDF put together that in this case I think are helpful because it kind of shows the location of these target facilities and kind of where the tunnels run underneath. And then they do back out to show what this actually looks like as it's being destroyed. So a lot of this infrastructure was not just infiltrated by the IDF where they cleared the facilities, pulled out intelligence that we'll see here in a minute, and weapons to identify some of these locations, but then regularly pulled back and detonated the tunnel in on itself. This one obviously looks a little more rudimentary, not nearly as well built as some of those others. But again, look at the depth of this tunnel network and what Israel is expecting to go up against. Sleeping quarters there for some of the soldiers. Earlier in the war, Hezbollah put out some announcements saying that some of these tunnels could facilitate a unit living there for 6 to 12 months at a time. Like they had enough supplies and equipment down there to maintain a significant force for quite a while. I think we've got 3 total of these videos showing kind of the breakdown with these operators moving into these tunnels under the homes or under what looked like civilian infrastructure in Lebanon. Now, the IDF did not say that these videos were recorded in the last 24 to 48 hours. In fact, in their announcement, they said that the IDF has conducted dozens of targeted operations in areas near the border in southern Lebanon in order to dismantle Hezbollah's terrorist capabilities and infrastructure that pose a threat to Israeli civilian communities in northern Israel. We haven't heard a lot about that. Just a couple days ago, there was an announcement in the Wall Street Journal, I believe, saying that Israeli Special Operations Forces have conducted multiple raids into southern Lebanon, into Hezbollah tunnels in southern Lebanon. We hadn't seen any evidence of that at all. Like Hezbollah wasn't talking about it. Occasionally, there were kind of rumors that there was some fighting at the border, but nothing at all like this. So again, everything we're seeing here, not recorded in the past 24 to 48 hours, but somehow hasn't come out publicly like at all. Now we're starting to see a little more robust, look at that, just tunneling through the rocks there. Oh, here we go. This was a longer clip that I cut down. I'll link the IDF Telegram channel where I came across all this footage, so you can watch all these if you want. But this specific clip ended up being like 5 minutes long of just explosion after explosion after explosion. I thought we can probably cut that down. You get the gist. IDF went in, cleared the facilities, came back out, and started detonating everything. Those look like charges that were placed on the inside, by the way, not necessarily airstrikes. Look at the quantity of munitions they're coming across here. This is, very, very different than what we saw coming out of Gaza. A lot of new munitions, right? Not nearly as much handmade stuff as we'd see in Gaza. And a lot of times when the IDF was getting into the tunnels in the Gaza Strip, you could see that Hamas had kind of evacuated the area, right? So there were remnants left behind, some older rifles, things like that, but pretty clear that they had moved a lot of their larger stockpiles away from there. That's not the case with what we're seeing here in southern Lebanon, where some of these are significant arms depots. I mean, look at that. Look at the amount of ATGMs just stacked up there, ready to go. And then these are like bunkers built into the side of a mountain. All right, it's going to take a lot to actually destroy that. This is what Hezbollah has been building up for years and years and years. It'll be interesting to see, and it'll be quite a while before we know this, but how much of this Hezbollah infrastructure in the south was Israel able to disrupt? We've seen a lot of airstrikes in recent weeks, really picked up in recent weeks, targeting a lot of these launch locations, storage facilities. But there's only so much you're going to be able to do against something. Look at the rocks surrounding that, how well fortified these positions are. There's only so much you can do against that from the air or from distance, which is probably one of the reasons that some of these sites were selected for troops on the ground, special operators, to move in and conduct the clearance. Based off of what we've seen in recent weeks, we go another tunnel, World War I looking entrance there in terms of like trench warfare. Not exactly sure what those are there, but something to make this livable, right? Somebody probably fill me in on what those big tanks are, whether they're water tanks or something else. But a lot of these tunnel networks are designed for the people to not just move in there and fight for a day or two, but again, live for weeks, maybe even months on end without having to come out to get new supplies and expose themselves to Israeli intelligence and fires. More living quarters. I think we saw a little bit of this clip earlier, actually. There were like 20-some clips and pictures released by the IDF, so we got a ton of different looks of these guys moving through there. Yeah, pretty well built up tunnel here. I mean, this is something that you would see in just the construction of that with the center blocks. Is something you could expect to see in a Western country, like under a city, right? It doesn't look drastically different than a basement in a built-up urban environment. I don't recall, having gone through all this footage previously, I don't recall seeing any engagements. Don't recall seeing any firefights. Don't recall seeing any dead Hezbollah militants, which is interesting. Even when they were doing the clearances, Jesus, look at that, 20 feet down that ladder. Even during some of the clearances in Gaza, we would pretty regularly see something blurred out on the ground that was obviously a body, a dead Hamas militant. And occasionally we'd get some footage showing firefights in those tunnels. Didn't see those at all here. Unclear. Maybe some of these tunnels are staged for future use, right? They're kind of pre-planned fighting positions that Hezbollah would move into at a predetermined point. And if there was some sort of ground invasion coming and Israel, in turn, was able to move into those without them being occupied, maybe. My guess is that these would have been defended to some degree. And prior to this footage, they cleared some size of a Hezbollah element out of that location. There was no footage showing where and how those guys were killed, anything like that. But a big piece here worth noting is the intelligence pulled out of these locations. This is something that clearly assisted Israel as they moved through Gaza, moving from one tunnel to the next. It wasn't just a matter of removing Hamas's ability to use that infrastructure to fight. Oh, there we go. The late Hassan Nasrallah. But also able to pull some of that intelligence, whatever it might be, right? Phone numbers, documents showing how much ammunition they have in certain locations, radio frequencies, whatever it might be, identification cards. All of that stuff can be valuable. There's really nothing that does not serve some sort of purpose when you have a sizable, looking at all these documents here, when you have a significant intelligence resource able to kind of sift through it and make meaning of a bunch of different things. So there is going to be a lot of valuable intelligence that Israel pulls from this find. God, so many explosives. ATGMs, breach charges. I like that, using the light on the Glock to show everything. Again, a lot of what we're seeing here, especially when you're talking about mines, and to a degree the ATGMs and some of the anti-personnel and anti-tank mines, a lot of that is defensive in nature, which is interesting, right? Looking at this, mostly what we've seen out of Hezbollah in recent months is offensive in the sense of firing rockets, missiles, and drones into Israeli territory. Of course, it looks like what Israel did here was move into some of these locations along the southern portion of Lebanon, along the border of northern Israel. And these were areas that were set up and equipped to repel some sort of Israeli ground offensive or a ground invasion of sorts. Again, fighting back tanks and infantry, things like that. So I guess that's probably the reason that the IDF sent in some number of special operators to clear out these tunnels.